Welcome to Grab or Stab. I'm Matt McFarland. Here we grab if it's good and we stab if it's not. Today I'll be talking about yet another reason why we need Sarah Connor to come back to stop these damn robots. Today I'll be talking about M3GAN, which was released in 2023. And if you're wondering which version in particular, I'll be talking today about the unrated version. I did see the PG-13 version in theaters, and I'll discuss some of the differences between the two a little bit later on in the video. But before we get into all that, let me explain how decisions are made around this place on whether or not to grab or stab a movie. First of all, it comes down to how good are the kills. Second, the characters. Third, how fun was the movie to watch, and just how good was the overall premise. And lastly, this is a horror channel, so how scary is it? Directed by Jared Johnstone and written by Akela Cooper, M3GAN is about a 9-year-old girl named Katie whose life starts out very similar to every Disney movie ever made. How? Well, her parents die, of course. This time, instead of being blown away by a 12-gauge like Bambi's mom, too soon, they die in a horrific snowplow accident. Katie is then sent to live with her aunt, who works in robotics for a toy company in Seattle. She happens to be developing an AI doll who eventually loses its shit and becomes real overprotective of its human companion, which, yes, is Katie. This sci-fi comedy horror serves as a commentary on the world that we currently live in, which in a lot of ways is overrun with technology. The movie's theme surrounds the fact that we rely on technology too much sometimes and what could happen if that technology goes buck wild. I don't get it though. What do you mean overrun with technology? Can't a man just get his rocks off hooked up to a VR headset with a bottle of lube? I'm just trying to keep Nivea in business, come on.
If we put so much reliance in technology and give technology these things that we don't want to do, they will not only do them and do them better, but they'll render us useless and they'll decide that they don't need us anymore. And that's really what the film's about.
The movie was filmed in LA and a suburb in Auckland, New Zealand. Not only were the early reviews for the movie really strong, but the marketing for M3GAN was a huge success. In large part because of a particular dance in the movie, which went viral across TikTok and other social media platforms. This was also a big reason why Universal decided to make the movie PG-13 and to focus more on a younger audience. That didn't draw my boomer ass to the movie though, but it clearly helped because the movie was a huge success, bringing in $172 million on a $12 million budget, which was probably also a surprise to the studio because usually movies that are released in January are kind of a dumpster fire. I just imagine a Universal executive waking up Monday morning hungover as hell with like 27 missed text messages on their phone, and then in the next board meeting just being like, yeah, it was all part of the master plan. Well, enough of all that. Before I decide to grab or stab this one, and also to give a little bit more context, let's get a little bit more into the plot. And it all starts with a little cutesy advertisement for perpetual pets where all your dreams will come true, and now you have a friend that lives longer than you. We then find ourselves inside of a car with Katie, her parents, and her perpetual pet who is currently shitting itself. Since her dad doesn't know how to drive in the snow, they pull over and wait for the roads to be cleared. Then, like I mentioned earlier, the snowplow then crushes them, killing both their parents and injuring Katie in the process. After the movie title sequence, we then cut to Seattle and inside the Funky Toy headquarters. Next, we meet Gemma, played by Allison Williams, who you probably remember from Get Out, who is also here with Tess and Cole. They're not only putting on this thing's new face, but are testing out a potential new AI robot, which they kind of stole $100,000 of the company's money to make. Yikes, I thought I messed up when I stole 2 Cinnabon K-Cups from my work's break room. But then her boss David comes in wondering what the hell's going on, and he's pretty pissed because he feels like she's keeping secrets, and he also told her to stop working on this thing. She's supposed to be working on a newer, cheaper pets model to compete with one of their competitors that just released something similar but cheaper. The AI robot thing is actually called M3GAN, short for Model 3 Generative Android. But Cole here fudged up and forgot one of the parts, so showing M3GAN to the boss doesn't go well. David wants her to stop working on M3GAN and focus on the new pets model immediately.
And I want a fucking swipe card for this door!
Turns out though, this was all happening around the same time as Katie's accident, because Gemma then gets a call from the Oregon Hospital Emergency Center. Eventually, after the hospital, the two go back to Katie's house to live. It's also pretty clear now that Gemma's not super comfortable doing this parenting thing, but at least she's trying. The two though are definitely having a hard time bonding. Seriously, who works at a toy company and has no toys they can play with in their whole house? If I worked at a toy company, my pad would be looking like FAO Swartz. I'd cruise over to the breakfast table on a hoverboard and then have my breakfast served to me by a Tickle Me Elmo. But when Katie finds Gemma's college project, a motion-controlled robot named Bruce, things get a little bit better. After seeing Katie playing with Bruce, this inspires Gemma to finish her work on M3GAN. Yeah, swipe this, David! Gemma then surprises David with a showcase of M3GAN's upgrades. After pairing M3GAN with Katie and showing off some of her new updates, David's now creaming his pants with the new potential that this could be the next big thing.
I want you all to remember this moment. The moment we kicked Hasbro right in the fucking dick.
Next step though, Gemma's got to convince the board to invest in the project. For the dialogue and the close-up versions of M3GAN, an animatronic version was created by Moro FX Studio. Jenna Davis performed most of the voice acting for M3GAN, and anytime there was physical movement required, that was performed by young actress Amy Donald, who also performed all of her own stunt work. Donald also wore a silicone mask of M3GAN, which was later replaced by CGI. M3GAN then comes home with Gemma and Katie, and starts to far exceed expectations on what her capabilities are. Basically, handling a lot of the parenting that Gemma was supposed to be doing, which means Gemma now has more time to focus on work again. But her colleagues and Katie's therapist are becoming concerned because she's growing an unhealthy attachment to M3GAN. M3GAN also starts improvising more and acting independently anytime something seems like a threat to Katie. Oh yeah, remember that neighbor's dog that bit Katie? You fucking dead. Regardless though, Katie and M3GAN knock it out of the park for the board and they agree to finance the project. But they want to do a live stream in 2 weeks so they can get pre-sale vouchers out before Christmas. But without them knowing, it looks like David's assistant Kurt is stealing proprietary files about the project.
Kurt! You want Pornhubbing in the office again, will you?
Was it the virgin look on his face or just the crusty keyboard, David? It's also safe to assume he'd been stealing from the company for a while and is probably the reason why their competitors were able to come up with knockoffs of their products. So nobody thought it was a little bit weird that he was showing up to work lately in a Bugatti? Next, there's a little shit named Brandon who bullies Katie at this outdoor field trip thing, then completely crosses the line by throwing M3GAN's shoe. So M3GAN tears off the kid's ear. I don't think ears are that stretchy, but sure. Then horrifyingly chases him on all fours, which causes him to trip and fall into the road and is run over by a car. Later that evening, after Gemma's neighbor Celia blames her for her dog's disappearance, M3GAN sneaks into her house and kills her, giving us some of the most horror-like parts of the movie and a pretty damn solid kill. First, nail-gunning her hand, then killing her with this chemical pressure washer. What? She looked dirty. The police are then starting to wonder why she's now been near 2 possible murders back to back. Gemma's getting pretty suspicious of M3GAN now, and when she tries to check her video logs, it turns out a lot of them have been deleted. So she turns M3GAN off and brings her back to work for more testing. But because Katie's so attached to M3GAN and she's also dealing with so much loss recently, she freaks out that M3GAN's gone, even at one point slapping Gemma. Oh no, she didn't! Now that they've come to the conclusion that M3GAN's too risky, they decide to terminate her. So while Gemma takes Katie home, Tess and Cole are the lucky ones who get to try and shut her down. But M3GAN's having none of that shit and almost kills both of them while she escapes. David's pissed now because the big unveiling is about to happen, but both Gemma and M3GAN are nowhere to be found. But don't worry, Davey boy, M3GAN's just looking for you. M3GAN does her little viral dance and chases down David with a paper cutter, then driving it right through his chest just before he gets in the elevator with Kurt. He dead. Kurt gets a nice little red shower, then begins soiling himself in the corner. M3GAN tells him she's gonna frame this whole thing as a murder-suicide, framing it as if David found out about Kurt's 5-finger file discount and then shit hit the fan. M3GAN then slashes his throat. Odd way to frame a suicide, but sure. She then upsets the livestream crowd, gets in a sports car and cranks his baby up to 88 and heads to Gemma's house. M3GAN's pretty mad now, so she confronts Gemma. She then tells Gemma,
"Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now."
And that she should take over the parenting duties from here on out. The two fight each other, ending up in Gemma's office. Eventually, Gemma gets in some damn good shots, but M3GAN gets the upper hand. M3GAN, though, knows that if she kills Gemma, that would only put her at a higher risk. So instead, she's thinking about stabbing Gemma in just the right spot to make her paralyzed. But then Katie comes in the room. Eventually, Katie saves Gemma by using Brucey Bruce to tear M3GAN apart. But looking like Carpenter's The Thing, the top half of M3GAN attacks Gemma again. Just before M3GAN's able to choke Gemma out, Katie plunges a screwdriver right into her processing chip, which appears to finally destroy it. The police then arrive, and I assume they're like, "We're here again?" Gemma and Katie then leave her house. However, right as they do so, the movie officially ends with the AI home assistant turning on by itself, meaning that M3GAN might have uploaded her programming onto it. There is also the possibility Kurt from earlier has already sold M3GAN's data files to some other companies. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and smash my Alexa now, Jesus. Actually, wait, I hope she didn't just hear that. Well, before I go and do that, let's first talk about M3GAN and I'll give you my decision. First though, I want to mention some difference that I noticed from the unrated version compared to the PG-13 theatrical version that I saw in the theater. Now I could be wrong and I could be missing some things, but from my recollection, it seems like when M3GAN ripped off the kid's ear, it showed a little bit more of that, like it showed the entire ear being ripped off in the unrated version. And then the scene where the neighbor gets her face kind of pressure washed off, I think it just showed a lot more of the cheek being torn off in that scene. And then also the other difference that I noticed was in the elevator scene towards the end when M3GAN kind of slashes Kurt's throat. It just really spouts off a lot more blood. I think those were the only three things that I noticed that were different. So pretty much 95% of the movie was exactly the same, except for just some slight differences. I really didn't notice that much. So, I mean, in the end, I kind of would have preferred this to be an R-rated movie, but I get it that they wanted to go PG-13. Obviously, it's gonna make you some more money. So next, I wanna get into some things I think the movie did well. There were a few decent kills in this movie, like when M3GAN kills the neighbor with the pressure washer, uses the nail gun to nail her down, and then pressure washes off her face. Yeah, the CGI on the cheek part is not great by any means, but overall, I mean, that scene had some good horror vibes and I enjoyed it. Another positive, I thought the special effects with M3GAN were pretty damn solid. They used a combination, like I mentioned, of animatronics, CGI, and practical effects. And there wasn't a single time throughout the movie where I was distracted because M3GAN looked fake or anything like that. The actors that performed M3GAN did the voiceover work, and then some of the, the physical movement work was really, really good. And overall, they did a really damn good job with that character. Another positive, the movie, in my opinion, does a good job of blending some of the sad moments mixed with some of the horror elements and the comedic elements. It kind of gives a little bit for everyone. You can go with a group of friends, and there's a little bit of something for everyone. If you have a friend that enjoys horror movies more, there's a little bit there for them. If you have a friend that's more into comedy, there's some there for them. And then if you have a friend that's maybe into more of like the deeper thematic elements, there's some of that there for them as well. And I can definitely see why that probably helped this movie be a little bit more successful, because it had a few of those elements mixed in a little bit for everyone. Next, I want to talk about the characters a little bit first. You've got Gemma's character, who's a very likable character in my opinion. She's all of a sudden thrust into this kind of caretaker mom role, and regardless of all the shit she's got going on at work, she still kind of takes that on and at least tries to do her best job. Not always successful, but at least tries to do her best job. She's also smart, figures out a lot of the plans at the end, does make some poor decisions here and there along the way, like everyone does. But in the end, she is a smart, likable character who I think comes across well on screen. I know Katie's character is kind of taking some flack, but she's a smart and resilient kid. On one hand, she's got this doll who's her best friend, basically telling her that it's them two against the world, and they need to do anything to basically just stick together. But she does end up sniffing out the bullshit in the end. There were a couple creepy moments in the movie, which I enjoyed, like when M3GAN's running on all fours in the woods. That was kind of a creepy moment. There's also some funny moments that I laughed at, like some of David's lines, and then also a little like Perpetual Pets commercial at the beginning of the movie. There were some funny moments that I enjoyed as well. And lastly, this is probably not that interesting to people who don't have kids, but I have kids, so I thought it was interesting how they touch on the subject of the constant battle you have with not letting technology raise your kids too much and the influence technology can have on your kids. Anyone who has kids knows you're in a constant battle every single day with like real life and going out and doing things, get your ass outside, mixed with like just screen time and technology. So I like that they touched on that in this movie. Next, as far as the bad goes, I personally felt like, in my opinion, the story arc and a lot of the things in the movie were very, very predictable. For example, like Bruce helping them at the end. I feel like that was a very predictable, I guess you could say, twist at the end of the movie that we've seen before. I just felt like a lot of the things we see throughout the movie were kind of predictable and kind of generic to me. Also, some of the music in the movie to me kind of just felt a little generic, like it was just cheap royalty-free music you could find with like a 5-second Google search. None of the music in particular was necessarily good or memorable to me. Music is very, very important to me in my movies. I think a lot of people overlook the music and how important it is. And in this movie, it wasn't really memorable to me. The first hour of the movie to me was definitely a slow burn. It dragged on at times. The second half of the movie was better. It did pick up a little bit, but the first half was definitely a little bit of a drag at times. I also feel like the movie has a little bit of a weird vibe to it throughout the movie, like this weird kind of somber vibe. Like, does Katie or Gemma ever smile at all throughout the entire movie? I know there's a lot of shit going on, but I would have thought going into the first time seeing this movie that it would have been like a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more bright, with like a better mix of like comedic and funny and happy and low. But it's just kind of a somber movie throughout. Like I said earlier, I like Katie and Gemma's character, but outside of those two characters, there is a huge drop off in both acting and just character development. Yeah, David's character does have a few good lines, but like I said, outside of Katie and Gemma's character, there's just not much else. Also, I have to mention, like, who the fuck's gonna let some prototype doll with superhuman strength just hang out with a little kid unattended all day? Even sleep in the same room as the kid? Later on in the movie, Gemma's like, oh yeah, I forgot to put on the old parental controls to keep you safe. Sorry about that. With all that said, I'm going with a stab on M3GAN. If I was in my teenage years and maybe I was a little bit younger, maybe I would have enjoyed this movie a little bit more, but I just don't think there was enough here in this movie to kind of keep me engaged throughout the entire thing. I was kind of bored throughout most of the movie, even in the theater and on my rewatches at home. I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't usually have a problem with movies that are catered towards a younger audience. That usually doesn't bother me, but there's something about this movie that I just didn't really mesh really well with. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you really enjoyed this movie, I know this movie is really popular, a lot of people really like it, that's okay. I've got nothing against you. But to me, there's just something about this movie that I just didn't enjoy it enough. I just kind of felt myself bored. I do think this is definitely a movie to go and watch with a group of friends, which I didn't do, which might have impacted my first experience watching this movie. Also, the theater wasn't necessarily packed or anything like that. I do think it would be better in that type of an environment. The theater was maybe like a third full when I saw it, which might have impacted my first viewing. And then I just watched the movie, by myself at home. So that might kind of impact this, but it's not necessarily a movie that I really just mesh with. It kind of just is a little bit boring to me. Obviously, the rewatchability is not very high. If watching it at home by myself is not really that enjoyable of an experience. I also think this movie it doesn't do the horror really well. The funny parts are not that great. Like, they're kind of funny, but not that great. Obviously, the kills are pretty toned down, especially in the theatrical version. So as far as the kill goes, they're kind of mediocre as well. There's just not enough good things in this movie for me to really enjoy it. Honestly, I kind of look at it just like a worse version of Child's Play. But anyways, that's just me. Regardless, even if I don't really like a movie, that should never affect you going and seeing the movie. Like I've said before a million times, you just seeing this movie also supports the horror genre. Also, a movie I might not like, you might really love. A lot of people love this movie, so definitely go and watch it for yourself. So there you go, that wraps up M3GAN. Be on the lookout for new videos, which come out every single Friday. But in the meantime, I'm Matt McFarland, and you just finished watching Grab or Stab. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching my review of M3GAN. If you enjoy horror content like this, or just horror content in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications as well. Go tell a friend about the channel also, I'd really appreciate that. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to go and follow me over there. Like I said, be on the lookout. New videos every single Friday, I promise. But anyways, everybody, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.